Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ivory Matthews, and I am the Chief Executive Officer for Columbia Housing.
Hello, Miss Matthews.
Hi, how are you?
Good afternoon.
I'm fine, and you?
Doing great. Welcome to our Zoom into the polls, the importance of younger voters, Gen X, and millennials. I do want to let you guys know that we are recording tonight's event, and we do share all of our recordings on our YouTube channel. So I just wanted to make you guys aware of that before we begin. Younger voters, which we have defined as Gen Z and millennials, represent more than 50% of the electorate. They can affect the outcomes of the 2020 election more than any other group in this country. Still, many have questioned the benefit in engaging in the voting process. If the national trends and indications are true, many young voters may actually opt out of this election season. How should we address these sentiments? That is the essence of today's Zoom into the Polls show. We are delighted to have Collie Gallman, Hamilton Grant, Sam Johnson, Alonzo Julian, and our very own Commissioner Kara Simmons joining us as panelists. Likewise, we offer very special thanks to Dr. Jim Felder, Dr. Charles Austin, Vince Ford, and Chris Whitmire for being our subject matter experts on the voting process and other voting related matters. We are also especially proud to have all of you with us this evening.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for joining us today. And before we turn it over to our guest moderators, Jamie Drew and Ivan Carter, Yvonne Devine, who is our Chief Operating Officer, and I have opening updates from our subject matter experts. And I'll start first with Dr. Felder. Dr. Felder, you have been crisscrossing the state of South Carolina in the last few weeks. Any important updates you'd like to share with us this afternoon? Do we have Dr. Felder on? I'm sorry, I can't see everybody.
I don't think.
Okay, we'll pick him back up once he joins. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Bean. Ms. Bean.
Thank you, Mrs. Matthews, and good afternoon, everyone.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Ford. Mr. Ford is with us?
Don't see Mr. Ford yet.
Is you on the jet either?
Okay,
Yeah, but
so we do have Dr. Austin, so we'll proceed with him. Thank you, Ms. Bean. Dr. Austin, the Richland County Voter Registration and Election Office has been troubleshooting glitches in the system. How is that going?
So far, so good. We are responding to concerns as they are addressed to us in real time. I especially want to thank the Executive Director of the South Carolina Elections Commission and her staff for the invaluable assistance they provided. As we speak, we have recorded 42,000 in-person early votes cast. We've had 106,000 absentee requests, 90,105 applications for ballots, and 50,000 ballots have been mailed, and we've had 18,000 ballots returned. So that is very encouraging. I also want to announce that the satellite sites on Hampton Street and the Masonic Temple on Gervais Street will be open this Saturday and next Saturday from 9 until 1.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Ms. Bean?
Sure, has Mr. Ford joined us?
I don't see him yet, but Chris Whitmire is here from the State Election Commission.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. McRoberts. Well, Mr. Whitmire, the state keeps setting absentee voting records. How are you all able to keep up with the demand?
Well, mainly through good people like Dr. Austin and the people in Richland County and all the other counties out there. They're doing the hard work of making all of this possible. So it is extraordinary. Dr. Austin shared some numbers. Over the last 24 hours, 50,000 people have voted in person throughout the state. So
Wow, that's awesome.
when we first opened on October 5th, when all the counties first opened on October 5th, we were doing about 19 or 20,000 a day. Every day it's grown. And over the past 24 hours, again, 50,000 people voted. That's extraordinary. I
Absolutely.
never imagined I would be saying that number. Overall, we've issued, and these numbers are as of 1 o'clock today, but issued 814,000 ballots statewide, 370,000 of those in person, which, by the way, ties the in-person absentee record from 2016, and we still have 13 days to go before the election, 12 days to go before in-person absentee voting ends, and 2 weekends to go as well. We've issued 444,000 by mail, and 275,000 of those 444,000 have come back. I'd like to mention just a couple of, so absentees through the roof. Any kind of absentee record you could imagine has been broken. So we can just say they've all been broken. So we're well on track to over 1 million people are going to vote before Election Day, either absentee, by mail, or in person. That could be, we don't know what overall turnout's going to be. We know turnout in presidential elections are anywhere around from the high 60s to the record is 76% set in 2008. This certainly has the feel of a record-setting election. I don't know. We'll see. But if it's in that range, 1 million voters would represent about 40% of the turnout. So, and it could be higher than that. And, so potential is for nearly half of all voters to have voted before Election Day, which is extraordinary. The record for that was 24% set in 2016. 24% of the electorate voted before Election Day in 2016. So it's going to at least be 40%, could be even higher. Just a couple of deadline things I'd like to make sure, just raise the awareness about. One of those is the deadline to apply for a by-mail ballot. So if you still want to vote absentee by mail and you haven't applied yet, voter has to get that application in by Saturday. If they're returning it by mail or email or fax, if they're sending it in like that, it has to get there by Saturday, the 24th. After Saturday, for by mail, it's very limited. Either the voter has to come in person and bring their application to get a by mail ballot. And if they do that, well, they should just vote in person absentee, right? That's probably not the scenario, but that's allowable. And then voters with disabilities can have an authorized representative take their application to the office. But these are in both situations, someone's appearing at the office in person to return that application for a by mail ballot. So by and large, for most people, the normal process, the deadline is this Saturday to apply for a by mail. Of course, we're getting late in the process. I'm not really encouraging people to vote absentee by mail at this point unless they just really need to do that. I would encourage them to go vote absentee in person. Of course, that goes through Monday, November 2nd at 5 p.m. And lastly, if you have a ballot, vote that ballot as soon as possible. Put it in the secrecy envelope, put it in the return envelope. And you need to do 3 things to make sure your ballot counts. You need to sign the voter's oath, have it witnessed and have the address provided on the witness signature, and return it on time, which the deadline 7 p.m. on Election Day. Mail it back. If you're mailing it back, get it in the mail as quickly as possible. We recommend mailing it before Election Day. And you can also take it back in person to the voter registration office and extension office. Let me stop that from ringing. And lastly, you can send somebody else in with your ballot if you fill out that authorized returnee form. And lastly, I swear this is the last thing, you can't return your absentee ballot to the polling place. So there's a lot of people voting absentee for the first time. So I'm going out of my way to try to make sure everybody understands that you can't return your absentee by mail ballot to the polling place. It has to go to the voter registration office.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Whitmire, for sharing that wealth of information and also those record-breaking numbers. That's very exciting. I will now turn it over to our moderators, Jamie Drew. Jamie Drew, and Ivan Carter, who leads our homeless effort at Columbia Housing, and Ivan Carter, who works as a case manager in our Resident and Family Services Department.
Thank you, Mrs. Bean. It is so great to see, so many community leaders and organizations and Columbia Housing staff and our residents within the community. So thank you all so much for joining us today. A little bit of housekeeping before we move along today. Ivan and I are going to discuss. We will be using our chat room at the bottom of your screen. Okay, so if you have questions, please feel free to put them there, and we will open up the Q&A session at 5 p.m. and address your questions then. Ivan?
Thanks, Jamie. Today's Q&A will be handled by moderators. That's myself and Jamie. Lee McRoberts from our communication team will field the questions and relay them back to us. Our allotted time is 1 hour and 30 minutes. We may finish up early. Or we we may not, but that's fine. But that's our allotted time. So we want to be respectable of that time. So, Jamie, I think people are ready to hear from the panelists. Back to you.
Okay, yes. And listen, we want to remind our audience and our panelists that this is a discussion and not a debate, okay? So the questions will be directed to the panelists in alphabetical order. We're going to have 4 rounds of questioning. Ivan and I will go back and forth between rounds of questions and discussion. And as Ivan said, each of the panelists will have 2 minutes to answer those questions. Now, they don't have to use the entire time, but they can if they want to. And again, for audience members who want to ask questions, express themselves, please do so in that chat box on the bottom of your screen. And at 5 o'clock, we will get to the Q&A session. All right, so let's get right into these questions. Hope everyone is ready and drank their water. Now, some of you may know that rapper Ice Cube has been in the hot seat in the media lately, okay? Now, with his CWBA, that's Contract with Black America plan. So this plan, is sort of like a list of demands. It addresses different needs within the Black community. So the Republican Party, the current administration, has actually reached out to Ice Cube, and this is leading some constituents to believe that he is working with that administration. But Ice Cube is just saying, hey, I'll work with anybody who wants to work with me. So panelists, what we want to know, do you think this Contract with Black America plan, what kind of impact is it having on the young voters? Is it having any at all? Is this plan too little too late? Is Ice Cube qualified to even put this plan into place? I'm going to start with you, Kylie Goldman.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. That's a very loaded question.
Yes.
To start with, I would say, because my background is in PR and marketing, I pretty much question everything that is on the media and the timing of it. My personal opinion, I think that it's a distraction. I think that regardless of whatever his plan is or his purpose, I think timing is always something to consider. And the spin that media tends to put on things, as a member of a media, I know how to, word things to make it look as if it's something else. So, as far as qualifications, I don't think any celebrity that does not have any well-versed background in politics or economics or law or anything of a professional nature can be qualified to give just reasonable decisions, but as far as the platforms that they're on, that's why it's, they have that influence. So I have not actually even read up on anything that Ice Cube wants to do, but I can say that anything at this stage of the game, and as far as timing, is just all about distractions.
Thank you. Hamilton Grant, what do you think?
Hey, everybody. Well, first, thank you so much for allowing me to join you all and be with this distinguished panelist this afternoon. I'm going to deviate a little bit. I think we get into a little trouble when we try to put individuals in charge of an entire platform for a group of people. And so since this is a generational conversation, let's rewind back to the civil rights movement. The thing that made the civil rights movement so powerful was the structure and organization. You had groups from SNCC to the NAACP. Shout out to Miss Ovita Glover that's on. I see her with the Columbia branch. You had folks from the Columbia or from the National Urban League, all these other social groups that represented so many people that came together to put forth a platform and a plan and the agenda. And so whether you liked it or not, you had the opportunity to hash out, but it was always a grassroots process. Fast forward now to where we are to the Black Lives Matter movement. The number one thing that we lack as millennials and Gen Z is structure. The reason that is because everybody that has one of these has a platform and has an agenda. So while the movement does not belong to one person or individual, everybody can join in. And I think when we start talking about a platform for Black America or a contract for Black America, we've got to go back to our grassroots. Why can't let's just take Columbia, for example. Why can't leaders from Columbia Housing, NAACP, Columbia Urban League, community leaders, activists, elected officials get together and say, all right, let's point out 10 things that we want to see change here in our local community. Identify those 10 things, maybe narrow it down to 5 and say, hey, we are going to present this to our local leaders and hold them accountable. If they don't measure up to the standards, because that is the standard that you have put forth as a community, then you need to hire somebody else that is going to fulfill what it is that you want to see. So in moving forward and looking into what Ice Cube does or what anybody else does, I think anybody is qualified to have a voice, but not one person speaks for an entire movement.
Well said. And Sam Jones, is it too little too late?
Sam Johnson.
Johnson.
So I'm going to take off right where Hamilton left off. I think he's spot on. I think no one person speaks for anyone, right? Folks of color are not a monolith. White folks don't subscribe to one policy agenda, nor do folks, for example, you have groups like AIPAC and others who represent the Jewish community. There's no one contract that is right or wrong. Ice Cube, Snoop, all of them are welcome to put forward something. Whether or not we'll pay attention to it is a whole nother issue, as Carly mentioned, from a marketing perspective. I think what I would also suggest to Hamilton's point is that in 2020, as we walk around with encyclopedias in our pockets, as we are by percentage of much more educated population, group of people than our parents were blessed to be, than our grandparents were blessed to be. I think we will do our homework, right? And so when you start looking at policy agendas and what is able to be passed through a Congress or through a legislature or through a city council even, I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we are, as Hamilton mentioned, going down to the grassroots, doing our homework, doing the work that it takes to make sure that the issues that have to be addressed are issues that are addressed substantively, right? And I think that's the biggest challenge that we have as a people, and I say as a people, as a society, as the United States of America, right? And so I think, quite frankly, I heard Chris, my friend with the State Election Commission, mention the records that are being broken. I'm not surprised one bit, because we, as we have more voting age population come to the forefront and have the ability to vote, I think people are demanding more and wanting more. I think now the biggest question that we're going to have as we go into January, we start looking at turning the page on this election season, is are we going to do the work? Are we going to make sure that from a policy standpoint, whoever is elected, whether Trump gets a re-election and there's an administration, a Republican administration that has to be held to the fire, or Vice President Biden becomes President Biden, and we have to make sure that he makes due on some of the plans that he's touted during this election season, I think that we have to make sure that we're doing the homework and we're holding ourselves accountable, each other accountable for any plans that come forward, and certainly that includes ice cubes.
Well said. Thank you, Sam Johnson. Now, Alonzo Julian, are young voters listening to Ice Cube?
Hello, everyone. Yes, I am Alonzo Julian, hailing from the Great Allen University, 96 Student Government Association president, and I'm very happy to be here and to talk about these issues. Also, I would like to say that I voted today, to let you guys know. I just don't talk the talk, I also walk the walk, okay?
Nice.
I would like to say that kudos to 50 Cent for wanting our voices to be heard, but I do feel like that it is a timing issue. And I also feel like, how does he himself know what we want? You know what I mean? How do you know, how do you have a list of demands to put in the forefront of what every African-American wants from every walk of life? Did you have a panel of people? Did you have like people who are on the poorer population of the African-American community all the way up to the rich people like he is, to be able to make these decisions and make this list to have? Again, I still believe that it is too late. I also feel like it is also a distraction to the young voters. Young voters right now are in, well, I just said it, young voters are in the right now society. So they are all about, oh, a trend that happens real quick and they're doing it. They don't care what the repercussions are. They don't care what happens because of it. So they will just go for it. And I feel like that's where the distraction comes in, when you have something set up to where you're going to go to somebody that is as a president in this small amount of time, knowing that it's about to be voting, and they react quick. So I think that he is definitely going to affect the young population of voters. Also, I was going to say that Black America is no longer happy with the position that we're in right now when it comes to the president of the United States. So simply put, to end what I'm going to say, I feel like Black America right now does not trust what's going on with the president of the United States, and the change that can happen today is changing the president of the United States.
Thank you, Alonzo. And thank you for representing the young voters by voting today. And last but certainly not least, our very own Commissioner Kara Simmons. What do you say on the issue?
Well, no need to beat on a dead horse. I'm just going to echo my brothers Hamilton Grant and Sam Johnson by saying that, the African-American community, especially millennials, we're not monolithic. So there's no one person that speaks on all of our behalf saying, this is what we believe and these are our demands. I did not, and I have not read his demands, nor have I really engaged with the conversation. However, I did hear an excerpt that he presented the plan to both both campaigns, and the Republicans were the only one that kind of bit at the notion. The Biden campaign asked that, okay, if this is something that we'd like to consider once we're done with the elections, but right now our focus is on just getting people out to vote. And I feel, going back to earlier with the first panelist, which she was speaking on, saying that this is all a PR stunt. It's no different than Kanye West and everyone else who wants to engage and try to distract people from what's the focus and what's at hand right now. That, they're just trying to get people off the course of what's happening. So again, I do not believe that one person speaks on all of our behalf. And then we also want to think about, is Ice Cube really influential to somebody that was born in 1993? Right. Does he really have that level of influence on them? I mean, he barely was a part of my era. We go back and listen to that, but we weren't really old enough and aware of what was really happening during that era. So no, but again, we want him to be responsible when using his platform. However, again, he does not speak on behalf of all of us.
Thank you so much to all of you. Oh, yes,
I want to mention something else. So Hamilton mentioned it, and he probably just accidentally didn't say it because we usually think alike. But as he was talking about how, going back to the civil rights movement, how there were a lot of grassroots organizations, something else I want to highlight is those grassroots organizations were young people. Right. So absolutely. The Black Lives Movement and, all these other organizations. And even when you saw marching at the top of the pandemic, when everything else was going on, we were going through this double pandemic. They were all young people. So change happens in the midst of these conversations.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. it's certainly a cycle that we see young people spearheading those important grassroots changing efforts. Ivan? Is Ivan still with us?
Ivan's muted.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, guys? All right, guys, thank you, Jamie. We got to get to the meat of some of this stuff. I want to hear some honest opinions. So let's dive into it. Right now, Generation Z's and Millennials' voices are so powerful, and they're trend-setting right now. They're literally birthing movements, changing hearts, and bringing about awareness to a variety of issues such as police brutality, social injustice, criminal justice reform, and much more. Some of that energy has been compared to those, as you said, Hamilton earlier, to the civil rights movement. So how do we take that historic energy, all that galvanizing spirit that these young folks have, and how do we get them to translate that to the polls? Because the issue and the importance is voting. How do we get them to translate that energy to votes? What do we need to do, guys? Let's start with you, Hamilton.
Well, I think one of the things that I think turns a lot of people off from voting, whether you're young or old, is in the last 4 years, of course, seeing a lot of the rhetoric that comes out of DC. Anytime you turn on the news, it's breaking news. The president saying something, somebody saying something against the president, and then something crazy happens. And so it just turns you off from the whole political process. Talking over the years to young people and trying to get them registered to vote and encouraging them to vote. I hear so much conversation on presidential elections, and I hear very little conversation on school board elections, county council elections, city council elections. And I think one of the things we have to be very cognizant and careful of is expressing and stressing how important these local elections are. So we may never be fortunate enough to meet a Joe Biden or a Barack Obama, but we can meet a Kara Simmons who serves on the commission. We can meet a Sam Johnson who is out every single day. We can meet a Mayor Benjamin. We can meet Alonzo Julian who's doing great things with Allen University, or Kali Gallman. These are everyday local leaders who are making an impact on your everyday lifestyle. So for instance, if you don't like the fact that a brand new football stadium is being built right in your backyard, that's a school board issue. You don't like how high you have to pay for your water bill, that's a city council issue. You don't like the day that trash or recycling is collected, and God forbid we don't like the roads that we travel on, that's a county council issue. And I go a step further. If we don't like the fact that South Carolina is only one of 3 states in the entire country without hate crime legislation, that's a state legislator issue. And so these are all people who are represented from your community, who live near you, that represent you and make decisions on behalf of you for your everyday lifestyle. That's not to knock any of the federal positions from United States Senate to United States Congress, because all of those are important. But I'm telling you, the most action and the most importance that you'll see comes from these local elections. So I think if we put an emphasis on local elections so that people can take their national frustrations and have a local impact, more people will start that groundswell, and you'll start producing some of these local leaders to make some national differences later on down the line.
Thank you, Hamilton. Sam Johnson, the energy, the way the young voters have galvanized and got behind and pushed the Black Lives Matter agenda, what they're doing is historic. But Sam, we want to know, the people want to know, how is that going to translate to votes, and how do we keep them energized?
Yeah, I think it will. I think, as Hamilton mentioned, I think the important thing is the fire is lit, right? If you are marching down the street, if you are upset over anything, right? Whether it's, as Hamilton mentioned, if you're upset about your car going over too many speed bumps and whole potholes and all that good stuff, or you're upset about more policy related matters, whether it's criminal justice or what have you. The challenge that we have, and I mentioned it when we first started this discussion, is we've got people who are putting together policy agendas and concerns and voicing that anger and that frustration, the issue that we have to do is we have to show the connectivity, right? We've got to show that the anger that you have right now today over whether it's a police matter or whatever, we've got to show that there's a direct correlation to the action of voting and changing the outcome of whether it's who wins the election, or the very same person may win the election, right? But now they know that you've aired your grievances, right? As a voter, you've shown them that, hey, all right, I had X% of folks who vote for me now who are 25 years old. I better make sure that I'm listening to the 25-year-olds and their policy matters and what's important to them. And so I think we all see the headlines. We all see that the fire is lit as it relates to criminal justice and policing issues and that sort of thing. The other thing that we have to do is we have to show up on a Tuesday night and go to city council, right?
Absolutely.
County council. We've got to show up when as it relates to school board matters, and realize that school board matters to you not only if you have a child, right? One of the most frustrating things I hear is some folks who say, well, I don't have any kids, man, or my kids are grown, and they don't realize if your kids are grown, you're paying more in taxes at school board than you are to Richland County or the city of Columbia, right? If you don't have any kids, the same holds true, and so making sure that people understand whether you are angry and you're marching down Main Street, or you're a 65-year-old retiree and you're frustrated about your recycling not getting picked up, as Hamilton mentioned, there's a way to air your grievances. Voting is the #1 step, but showing up, sending an email to your elected officials, calling their offices. Great thing to do, whether virtual, as we're in this season of COVID now, and we're doing all these Zoom discussions or what have you. You can show up to your city and county council still, or when after this COVID season is over, you can show up on a Tuesday night and go to the beautiful city hall where me and Ivy used to work.
All right, Kylie Goldman, what's your take?
Yeah, I think Sam hit the nail on the head about connectivity. Me, because I'm not a politician, I'm not into politics, and a few weeks ago I created the website Voters on the Fence because of the Breonna Taylor decision. I was not well versed on local elections and the decisions and the powers that were made, and when Daniel Cameron is the Attorney General, who was appointed by the governor. And so with that whole decision, like, it broke my heart because I was like, this literally could have been me. And, on a personal note, my dad had a panic attack because of it and ended up in the emergency room because he was so distraught and thinking that this could have been my daughter as well. So in the middle of, they wouldn't let me in the hospital because of COVID. So in the middle of him and my mom being in the hospital, I'm outside in the car with my laptop and I'm like, what can I do? Like, Breonna Taylor needs something. She needs some kind of justice. And my mom is just like, the only thing you can do at this point is vote, is to, show the tears that of the election and how people's votes are impacted. So Sam hit the nail on the head when he said that there has to be a way to show some kind of connection for people to get it. If there's something that's personal in someone's life, they actually know and are affected by something, then that is a way for them to pay more attention to it, and we all have, a brother, sister, uncle, someone who's been affected in a negative way by some law or regulation that wasn't fair, but that was our justice system. So I think that the more education that we get in terms of being versed on politics and actually knowing that we head to these local elections, like as Hamilton mentioned before, and knowing the tiers of, city versus county, state, federal, who's appointed, who's elected, just knowing that general knowledge. And when you see those picket signs at every single light, know what that person's running for, know what that person represents, and know their platform.
Exactly. Awesome. Awesome. Alonzo Julian, some of the panel members are saying, they're saying that the fire's already lit. Young voters are excited. They're galvanized and the energy is there. Are you seeing that same energy at Allen Benedict Court? I mean, at Allen University, at Benedict College? Are other young voters and excited as you are to vote, or are they turned off?
I would definitely say at first, not so much. I want to say that a lot of we're in a social media era. So if they look good on social, they go to a Black Lives Matter event and post a picture of themselves, then they've done something, or they felt like at that point that they've done enough, and at that point they look good. But what I realized here at Allen University, we as the Student Government Association felt like, well, we really need to be the ones to show them. So sometimes when you have a peer or you have somebody that is on your age level or on your bracket, or like that's a student, whether it's a family member or whatever the case may be, and they see you doing something and they see how important that you take those actions and those steps, that makes them feel more comfortable with doing so. So I can only speak on Allen University, not necessarily Benedict, but we have actually got, when registration was going on here, they had different people on campus. It wasn't really a great response, but when we got out there to register students to vote, we got a enormous response and registered, many students to vote. So I would say that right now in the season of COVID especially, we need to make sure we find innovative ways to make people vote and try to do different things. Social media is a good one. Events like these also help helping people vote. Different challenges, also being creative. I know as far as us are concerned, we have next week a red, white, and blue fashion show thing that we're going to do virtually, where we're going to get different students to participate and just walk a fashion show, you know what I mean, with signs for voting and stuff like that to get them more amped up to vote. And so I feel like these things that they need as far as being creative is what's going to help them to vote. And then also speaking on the long-term effects of voting, just see how far we've gotten today from other people voting, as far as our parents or anybody like that, is to see how far we've gotten today. So I feel like being creative and getting them out there to vote is a great way. And also speaking on the long-term effects, if we do not vote, what could happen, and taking them off of social media and letting them know that it does not stop there. It's a longer journey that we have to go.
Commissioner Simmons, will this energy translate to votes?
Hopefully it does. A good friend of ours, the panelist here, is Antoine C. Wright, and he has this quote that he's been using throughout the voting season, that if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. So what we have to get our peers to know and to realize is that, hey, if you're not here and being a part of the conversation, the decisions that we're going to be making on November 3rd, those are the decisions that are going to affect you and direct you specifically. Sam and Hamilton hit on the point of, okay, yeah, you need to understand the tiers of, what problems and who makes those decisions. And Sam hit on the point about school board and, well, you may not have children. And he talked about it from an academic perspective, but even looking at it from an economic perspective, think about those people who are sitting on that board. They are responsible for the budgets that makes the decision on who's going to put the speaker system in at the football game. Right. So they can make a decision for, a $32 million project for an African-American small business that can change the trajectory of their whole entire business. So when we're thinking about these people who were electing during the big seasons, such as the presidential elections, and then such as, those off seasons, we'll call them, these people are making drastic decisions that are affecting our community. And that's something that we have to get young people and our peers to really realize, that, hey, it's not just about today, and it's just not about the president. It's about, every day, those day-to-day activities and those day-to-day decisions. North Main has been an issue for me since I moved to Columbia in 2010. with the penny tax and the roads when I came to Columbia College. They just finished those roads, but that is a question that I had been addressing directly with city and county council until I saw something to happen. So these things are definitely true. And the thing that I do like about Columbia is that I do feel like the leaders are reachable, and you can call them up and you're going to get a response.
Awesome. So in other words, there's other things on the menu besides the presidential election.
Absolutely. And I know primarily our audience is African American, and I feel like a lot of people were disappointed during the Obama administration. They were expecting a whole lot of things to happen, but what I think people didn't understand or connect the dots is he wasn't as successful as he primarily wanted to be in certain communities because he did not have the support to get those things to happen within the House and the Senate. Where are those decisions made? How do you get those people to support somebody at a presidential level? Well, that means we have to come out on an off year to vote. So just not this year, but next year there are going to be elections. We'll be voting for mayor. You know, those are the kind of decisions. We'll be voting for those who are going to sit in Congress and that kind of thing. And if you don't have the infrastructure for them to be supported, then you're not going to move or get as advanced in plans that you feel like you should see or get the response that you want.
Thank you so much. Jamie.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Ivan. And thank you to all the panelists. Great responses. You know, I'm going to write that down. If you are not at the table, then you are on the menu. And listen, with that being said, millennials and Gen Zs are definitely at the table, you know, in this year's election, again, making up over 50% of Americans today. Those are the young voters. And so with our specific population, just as Julian said, social media is so important. You know, you see this current administration really taking advantage of that, using things like Twitter all the time, Facebook, Instagram, of course, we can't forget about TikTok, okay? So can we continue with politics as usual? Is beating the pavement, you know, a thing of the past? Or do we need to get with the times and get with more social media, just as Julian was saying? And if so, you know, what type of plan of action are we taking to get there and engage these young voters with those things, such as social media? I'm gonna start with you again, Kylie.
I would say, you know, in marketing, they always tell us that you have at least 3 times or 3 ways to reach people for them to actually receive and actually, you know, get the message, retain it. And so social media is a very, very viable platform. However, there are lots of millennials who are not on social media. You know, the shift in Facebook has been to the seniors, you know, but you do have the TikTok, Snapchat, and all that other stuff too. So I would say, as far as outreach and getting to people, there's still traditional media. You know, we still can have, you know, billboards, digital billboards, and all those things too. But the reference is to have at least 3 different ways to reach people, whether it's radio, TV, billboards, social media, ads, you know, any kind of way, because people retain that information the more often they see it.
Okay, so multiple touches for sure. I hear that. Hamilton?
Yeah, Kylie's absolutely right. And, you know, earlier this year, I was actually on the other side. I was a candidate. I ran for Richland County Council. And we had this robust campaign plan to go out, hit the pavement, shake hands, talk to people, knock on doors, then boom, COVID-19 hit. So we had to completely rearrange our entire infrastructure to switch, because, you know, your traditional way of campaigning was changed. And so we were now creating the blueprint for something that had not happened before. So what we saw was, just like Kylie said, there was a switch and a large shift in viewership on Facebook, on Instagram, versus what you would see on Snapchat or TikTok for the Gen Z, and then there was a lot of people on Twitter as well. But what we also learned was you can't just talk to one demographic. You got to reach everybody, especially if you want everyone to vote for you. So I can't look for people over the age of 50 on Instagram, because 9 times out of 10 they're not there. And I can't look for people under the age of 35 on Facebook, because a lot of them are not there. So you've got to be very wide reaching in who it is, and knowing your audience, and knowing specifically who you want to target. For candidates, you have to do a deep dive into your demographic of the race that you're running for to know who turns out the vote the most. And in my specific case, it was those voters 35 to 50 who we can always guarantee to show up to the polls. And knowing the trends of people from 35 to 50, not all of them are going to be on social media. I got to get on the phone and call voters. I got to get on TV, which costs money. I got to get on the radio. I got to try to show up to as many virtual church announcements as possible because that's where that demographic is. Now, that's not to say we want to leave behind our demographic of 18 to 25 or the 30-year-olds, but we have to make a way and be wide-reaching and very diverse in how you reach these electorates. And so there's not a one-size-fits-all because even though millennials are over 50%, the old school is the demographic that is always guaranteed to show up and show out to the polls. And a lot of emphasis should be placed on old school infrastructure with new school tactics.
Okay. Sam, how do we move forward with the young voters? 39 and under, I believe, is millennials, and Gen Zers below that. How do we move forward with new or old tactics?
Well, it's funny, you know, as someone who's helped run campaigns in the past, I'm feeling old, TikTok and all that good stuff. You guys got me beat. But I will say, I think I totally agree with Kali and Hamilton. You got to meet voters where they are, right? And you also have to be responsive to what's happening around you. If you're in the middle of a pandemic, you can't go knocking on doors, right? And so, you know, I think we you know, what catches someone's attention and eye and sticks are two different things, right? And so, as we start off this conversation talking about, I guess, Ice Cube and his plan and all that good stuff, I'll be honest. I saw something on a blurb or something on it. I hadn't taken the time to read the plan. Nor did I take much stock in it. I got a 4-month-old and a job, and so you know that hours in the day hadn't allowed for me to quite digest Mr. Cube's plan. And so I say that to say, you know, it takes so much to permeate through just the everyday noise, right? We all have so many responsibilities. It feels like those responsibilities have just multiplied in 2020, where so many of us are responsible for the health and well-being of our families, making sure some of us may have family members who have comorbidities and increased challenges this year. And so what sticks is tough, right? You know, do you do a Jamie Harrison ad that I'm sure we've all seen? Or do you do an ad on Hulu or Netflix or buy an ad on the Post and Courier's website, right? And so I think you have to be flexible, which also means, and since we're talking about voting, it's also important to talk about the other aspects of participating in the process, which are fundraising, right? And so in order for candidates to be able to do any of those things, they have to raise funds, and certainly if you have the ability to and you believe in someone strongly, you have to give to those candidates and campaigns. And give doesn't necessarily mean monetarily, right? It may mean sweat equity, right? I started my career. I started my career as a public servant before I was in the mayor's office, as somebody who helped put up yard signs and lip stamps and do mailers for candidates that I strongly believed in. And so sweat equity is one way of giving. So I say that to say there's so many ways to reach people. All of those things matter. Yard signs, billboards, all of the traditional ways matter. Digital and technology matters as well. But we have so many folks who are impacted by the digital divide as well, that we have to realize that you're not going to catch everybody because of that divide. And that's something that has to be captured as well.
Thank you. Alonzo, you mentioned creativity in social media. Does everything count?
I definitely feel like we need to get with the times now. I know, because I mean, young voters, I mean, when it comes to newspapers, when it comes to news, when it comes to magazines, when it even comes to toys, you know, no young people are not doing that anymore. They're strictly doing everything virtually. I think we are getting away from talking about the youth, which was a part of the question. We talked about 50% or more is, you know, of the, you know, young voters, you know, that can affect the polls. I think sticking to the 35 and up, who you know is going to show up to the polls, I mean, I think that's a great thing. But these other youth people are not coming to the polls at all. You know, I think the emphasis should be placed on the youth, which means that I feel like we need to come, not the youth, excuse me, the young voters. So I feel like we need to come with the times of social media and TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram and all of these different type of things to encourage them. And that might be the swing to get you over the hump in order to be elected in different offices and different things like that. I feel like that's where the creativity comes in. Being able to learn those different types of things. Maybe even speaking to the 35 and up people who are going to show up to polls, if they're going to be the ones to show up, then you moving to the times. And if they genuinely like who you are and everything like that, I feel like they will probably maneuver over to that if you have something set up. But just in my opinion, I feel like we do need to get with the times of what they like. This is only going to do this. It's only going to go up. It's not going to be, they're not going to knock themselves down when they come 35 years old and then start, you know, wanting a knock on the door or wanting, you know, to read a newspaper or anything like that. Things are changing, times are changing. At the end of the day, social media and stuff is only going to get bigger. It's going to only get hopefully better and everything like that. So I feel like moving with those times before this generation reaches the 35 and stuff age will be more beneficial.
Thank you. Kara, are we preaching to the choir by playing to who we already know is going to come to the polls? Or what is social media's impact on these young voters here? Can we keep it up the same way?
So Julian is making me feel real old because I'm going to deviate from his opinion. And from someone who, I don't say I work in PR, but I do a lot of PR and marketing. And for me, I feel like we have lost the art of true journalism. And a lot of the information that we find on social media and different platforms such as Instagram and TikTok and all that kind of stuff is not credible. So my challenge for saying that we need to move forward and push forward and finding ways to be innovative on social media is that I feel like we have not captured the moment, or we haven't figured out how to obtain and maintain credible sources because we know, and you know, facts have shown and research and investigation has shown the impact that social media had on the 2016 election and how it basically swayed things because of misinformation that was shared via social media. So do we need to continually be innovative? Absolutely. Going back to what Hamilton said, we keep those same practices and then we just add a new twist to it. So am I a fan of social media? Yes, I'm on it. Probably not as engaged as people think I am because you got to learn how to play with it and make it work for you. However, I am not sold on social media may need to be the only way or something that we push because we haven't captured a way of making sure that the information that we share is consistently credible.
Ms. Drew, if I could chime in real quick, because I think Kara hit an excellent point. I was reading an article the other day online. Y'all give me that much credit. But I was reading an article the other day. It showed that in 2016, the bulk of the misinformation that was created in 2016 was specifically targeted for folks of color. And so I would just say, and a lot of that misinformation, of course, was targeted through social media. And so I would just say it's extremely important, no matter where you get your news and information from, do your homework. Once you've read it, don't take it for gospel. Make sure that you are really giving direct analysis and really challenging the information of which you're reading. And I think, unfortunately, there's too much. There are too many of us who read stuff, see stuff online or what have you, that is tailored and targeted towards us, and allow that to shape our opinion without knowing what truly has happened. And in some instances, it is a whole different reality. And that is unfortunate. So I just have to throw that in there.
No, Sam and Kara, you made some excellent points, and you're really speaking to the conversation about so much information. As Hamilton mentioned earlier, anybody with with a phone or a laptop can have a platform, and so that really speaks to the indecision that some of the young voters have today with all of the information that they are bombarded with. So great points you all made. Ivan?
Yes, thank you, Jamie. With every topic that we discussed today on front and center on the front of our minds, the truth of the matter is some young folks may be turned off by both candidates because of the way they conducted themselves, and they're undecided whether they're even going to participate in voting this year. Some may not even know what's at stake when electing a president of the United States. So, but they don't understand that non-vote may actually mean a vote for the other side. A vote for someone whose ideas and legislations is not in line with what they believe. So it's important that young folks understand now more than ever that it's important to vote. But since they're turned off, Jamie. They're turned off. They're seeing presidents go back and forth. They see social media, this person versus this group, this group versus this group, and it's confusing them. But in essence, they may not even understand what's at stake. The Supreme Court appointments, the policies, the legislation that's being pushed through Congress. So if we had a chance, panel, if you guys had a chance, and a young person came to you, looked you in your face, and asked you the question, why am I voting? And what am I voting for? I want you guys to act like you guys are looking young folks in the face, and you tell them exactly what they're voting for. The legislation, the ideas, the current or previous administration. Let them know what really is at stake. Let's start with you, Commissioner Simmons.
I have heard this question over. I've been zooming to the poll on so many different panels, and this is one of the closing questions on all of them.
Is it?
And my answer is you're voting for your life. We can think back to 6 months ago on where we were as a country. And if we had true leadership and an administration that really cared about people over politics, we probably would be back to a new normal, not back to the original normal, but a new normal. And we can clearly see how the lack of leadership and the lack of concern where it's left us. So we're not just voting because we want, a new president just to have a new president, but you're literally voting for your life. This person makes the decisions on rather, literally you live or die in a capacity of access to healthcare, access to resources. Everybody has known somebody that's been affected by COVID. In some capacity, we all have been affected by COVID, whether that's going to work or working from home, walking around wearing masks. All of that has been a result of COVID-19, and the administration clearly showed where their concern has been, the current administration. So is that the direction that you want to continue going in? Or do you want a chance and an opportunity for new leadership to come in and to implement something that they feel like may work a little bit better? And I had a student recently say, well, I'm not sure if I'm going to vote. Like, I don't see how it really matters. And that was she's a sophomore in college. And I said, well, I'm tired of you complaining about you want back your normal for your college experience and you want to be able to go to 5 points and do what you want to do. And I said, I know you don't think of the connection, but literally if we had an administration that had taken the time to actually do what we needed to do and implement certain things, you may have some sort of a college life experience. But until then, you got to wear this mask and stand 6 feet away from me.
Hamilton Grant, it's a lot of talk around Supreme Court nominees and what's going on right now. I really want young folks to understand exactly what's at stake when selecting selecting Supreme Court nominees. So I want to know, Hamilton, why am I voting? What am I voting for?
So I'm not a lawyer, but I play one on TV. I diverge the realness of that question to my brother Sam. But I think, I was always told you never tell grown folk what to do. So instead of telling folk why they should vote, I'll just take a stab by telling a few reasons why I'm voting. One, I'm voting because I don't want to continue marching on the front lines for the same things that my grandparents in Clarendon County had to march for and lost jobs for and toiled and sweated over. I'm voting because, I don't want my 5-month-old son to grow up to be a young man and get pulled over just because of the color of his skin. I'm voting because I believe science is real. Hello. I'm voting because I believe a woman should have all the right to decide what she wants to do with her body, and she should have equal pay to her male counterparts, if not more. I'm voting because I believe that HBCUs are the lifeline to our college education system, and the funding that they get are well below inadequate, and that should change. And so in some of those, and I can go on and on, but I think, we have to set aside and look at, why it is that you want to vote, or what issues are important to you, and who aligns yourselves with those issues. We talked about the Supreme Court. These Supreme Court picks and these judges that are being appointed by the president are getting younger and younger and younger, and that is by design. One, not a person of color has been appointed to the bench, which is an issue. But two, these judges are conservative, and they're looking or they're predicted to reverse and change a lot of the things that help make our society what it is. I think there's going to be an important case, and again, I'm getting in trouble by playing lawyer, so I'm gonna rely on Sam a little bit. But there's going to be a case being heard, I believe, on November 10th or November 13th. That's going to decide and discuss the Affordable Care Act, better known as Obamacare, that we all are blessed to have, because healthcare should be a right. But if you have people who are appointed to these judges and these positions that want to take that away, that's going to make healthcare so much more harder to attain, especially in an environment of COVID-19, where numbers are starting to go up. I believe every country, every state in the nation are seeing numbers on the rise. Some experts say that we're entering into the second wave. So the next 30 to 90 days are going to be very critical. And so if you don't have that healthcare and you don't have that access, COVID can literally be life or death for somebody. So for me, I'm voting because I want to see these things change, and I just believe the leadership that we currently have is not cutting it.
Sam Johnson, I'm confused. I'm young. I'm galvanized. I've been marching every day, every other week. But when it comes to voting, I do not know exactly what I'm voting for outside of what's on the surface. I don't know what I'm voting for. Please help me, sir.
Well, a couple things. One, as Hamilton mentioned, I'm certainly happy to share what's important to me, right? Ms. Simmons talked about voting for my life. I'm not only voting for my life, I'm voting for the lives of everyone I love and care about, right? I can tell you personally, I am convinced if 45 was not president, and I know I'm very aware that this is a nonpartisan discussion. But I am convinced if Mr. Trump was not president, both of my father's parents would still be alive. My mother's sister would be alive. And it's tough to just being very open and put my feelings out there. It would not be. It's very tough to equate that three people that I know and love that came to my house for Thanksgiving and Christmas last year will not be able to come and enjoy Thanksgiving and Christmas with me this year because of the decisions and the inaction, the vacancy of leadership by one person who is not big enough as a man to take guidance and leadership from people who have expertise and understand science. And so that's just a glimpse of why it's so important to vote on one particular front, right? Ivan, you mentioned Supreme Court. And my brother Hamilton mentioned the Affordable Care Act case that's coming down the pike. There'll be several other cases that are right on the other side of 2021 that are extremely important. I would say, and I'll talk about this from a nonpartisan perspective, Republicans will tell you, and Supreme Court picks are chosen based on their conservatism, and generally the quality of a Supreme Court justice is whether they attribute their judicial selection as corporate, or they side on the side of the individual, right? So, do you care more about the corporate dollar as a Supreme Court justice, or do you care more about the everyday individual? Is generally one of the grades that the U.S. Senate uses to decide whether or not they're going to nominate and put somebody on the Supreme Court. Of course, religion and where they side on Roe versus Wade and some of those other issues are also a part of that analysis. And so I would use this current issue that we're dealing with, as an opportunity to highlight the importance on just this front. And so there are a number, I think somewhere I read it's close to 30 or so cases that have already, election law cases that have already been decided, right? So the Federal Circuit Court has already decided those cases. And those cases have already gone through the Federal Court of Appeals, right? The next level, where we all know that over the course of these last 4 years, President Trump has been very aggressive. The Senate Republicans have been very aggressive in stacking the Federal Court of Appeals. Why have they done that? Well, they've done that because in instances like this, where election law issues have come to the forefront and been challenged, they may lose on the Federal Circuit Court level, but then they have a Federal Court of Appeals that they've stacked the deck on and can then say, you know what, guys, we may have lost on the lower level, but we can just go ahead and get it overturned. And then if it goes to Supreme Court, we have 6 out of the 9 folks on Supreme Court. We'll get through anything that we want. And so that's just from a Supreme Court perspective. As Kara mentioned earlier, our lives, whether it's public health, whether it's housing, whether it's education, whatever it may be, those issues are on the ballot every election cycle, whether it's local, whether it's state, county council, whatever, is on the ballot every time. Now, what I would also say is don't vote based on one issue. Make sure you're doing your homework, and providing a complete analysis of whether this person is the right person to represent you or not. Don't just look at, oh, this person will give me more tax breaks here, but this person might kill me there, right? You need to make sure that you're really doing your homework and figuring out if somebody is the best overall representative for you.
And I'm glad you said that, Mr. Johnson, because some people may honestly feel that they relate more. Some African Americans might feel like they relate more to Republican for a Republican ticket. So that is some things to consider. Ms. Kylie Godman.
Yes, I would say, Hamilton and Sam both hit the nail on the head in terms of association. My reason for voting is pretty much a mix of the two of them in terms of, I am a HBCU graduate. I went to Florida A&M for undergrad before I went to USC. And, I'm also a student of history. My father sang at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s funeral. So, growing up hearing all those stories about segregation and about everything that they went through, that is one of the reasons why I vote. As far as reaching the young voters, it is about association again. And as I think Mr. Julian said earlier about, how they rely on social media and things like that. But if we find the association for what they care about, what matters to them, even if it's something surface level as the 5 points curfew being extended to 3 a.m. so they could party more. If they know that there's a candidate who is campaigning for that, then that piques their interest, you know, on a surface level for them to get out there and vote. But as Sam mentioned, do your homework on all the candidates to see how else your livelihood is going to be affected, meaning your minimum wage, your health insurance, any kind of, you know, the same way that you would do with a job. You know, you may take a job that may be paying you $75,000 a year, but your health insurance premiums are very, very high, as opposed to getting a job paying $60,000 a year where you don't have to come out of pocket for anything. So it's all about doing your research for anything that you make a decision on to make sure that it fits what matters to you, and not to be belittled about what matters to you. You know, a lot of people care about things that I would consider surface, but whatever, everyone has the right to care about something and to campaign for something that they believe in.
Alonzo Julian.
Yes, I would say that the Vote for Life spoke to me, but also that voting for love also spoke with me as well. Just having those loved ones and stuff like that you really are voting for. Also voting for change, making sure that we know if we vote, you know, things can happen and things can change in our society. We're still slow moving, but we are not where we used to be, and that is a testament to voting. And then the point that I really want to make is voting because we can. We tend to, as far as the younger voter generation, tend to get away from, you know, not realizing that, you know, we have the privilege to vote, not realizing that, you know, in some instances, our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents did not have that right at all. And just expressing that part of saying that we have that option, and especially in a society where we're looked down upon and weird upon doing many, many things. Showing up to the polls is probably one of the things that you can do right now that you won't be looked at like you're crazy or something like that, no matter how you look or how you dress, because you're going there to do what, you know, what it is that you need to do. So I think that making sure that we know that we can vote, and we don't get ridiculed for voting. We're often praised more so than the opposite for voting. I feel like that right there stuck out a lot when I've spoke to a lot of students and getting them ready to vote.
Awesome. Right now, guys, we're gonna actually go around and do some closing comments from each of our panelists. This has been a wonderful conversation. Wonderful. Jamie, do you wanna say anything?
Well, I know that it is 5:13 right now, and we did discuss opening up the Q&A. Lee, do we have a couple of questions that we can fit in?
We had a quick question for Mr. Julian. Somebody said that they noticed that as a student body president at Allen is obviously an interest in politics. Is that something that he sees himself doing going forward?
Well, I can honestly say that I was probably never really truthfully interested in politics, but being able to be a panelist and speaking with Jamie Harrison, and also moving over to being invited to a Zoom meeting with Congressman Clyburn, I feel like I've pretty much sparked something. It has enlightened something in me, knowing that the little bit I did right there made a change and was beneficial to other students around campus. And I kind of sort of do look forward to being and making bigger changes.
Yes, sir.
You did a great job on WIS, by the way, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And Sam, I caught what you said. I'm not sure if you were saying that you had some relatives that actually passed away from COVID. I want to send my condolences, and I did caught that, and we keep our prayers is with you, brother.
Appreciate you, brother.
Lee, do we have any additional questions from our audience?
I did have one other question, and more to the panel in general. Noticed that a lot of folks talked about being engaged and learning those things. Somebody wanted to know how much of an influence your family and did seeing people around you growing up involved in voting and the voting process encourage you to be involved at the age you are now?
I'll take a stab at that first. My family had a tremendous impact on the process in making sure that we vote. All the way back to my grandparents, and I kind of touched on it earlier. My grandfather grew up in Manning, South Carolina, rural Clarendon County, where he took his funds that he was going to purchase a vehicle for himself, but instead purchased a school bus to bus Black kids who had to walk miles to school. My grandmother, who grew up right down the road in Manning, Somerton, South Carolina, who she lost her teaching job because her father signed the original NAACP petition that led to Briggs versus Elliott, which subsequently led to Brown versus the Board of Education. And so having that historical context and understanding how much of a role it is that you have to make sure that you do what you need to do to make sure that you progress the needle forward is something that is extremely important to me, and that has gone through my family up until now. I think one of the important things that everybody has to contend with, no matter what age group you find yourself in, is are you willing to make the sacrifice for a better tomorrow, even if you yourself do not directly benefit from that sacrifice? And when you think about the sacrifice that our grandparents had to make, that our parents had to make for the same struggles that we're fighting right now, we have to lay the groundwork so hopefully that our children and their children don't have to fight those same struggles as well. So I think as long as we look at these issues from a servant leader mindset and putting forth those sacrifices, I think we'll all be better down the line.
I would just chime in, and before I start on that one, I'll say I see Dr. Ford and Dr. Felder and have joined us. I see, of course, Chairman Camardi here taking part in this conversation as well, and Dr. Austin as well. So, of course, we've got Kylie, and I always think about her and her daddy and mama, and how much I care for and appreciate them and their leadership. What I would say my earliest memory, and I'll come back to that point in a minute, but my earliest memory, I was one of those kids, go figure, who was bad and you couldn't get to sit still. And I remember my dad used to make me watch the nightly news. And I remember him making me watch some of the presidential debates. And I remember he was a big Ross Perot fan. And I was like, I don't understand, like, dude's third party. I don't get all this party stuff. And so I remember, I have those memories. But I remember vividly my dad taking me to the polls and explaining to me, how much we'd given up, how much this country, the folks of color had been given up, and how important it was to take the opportunity and voice your civic duty. And so that is one of my earliest memories, and certainly I've always tried to be a very active voter. But then I remember as I was getting older, not being sure of what I wanted to be when I grow up. And I remember early on looking at the Google, and back then we called it Yahooligans. But I remember, Googling the South Carolina African American history calendar and seeing a Dr. Ford or Tony Grant or some of those giants' shoulders that we lean on. And it helped me understand, quite frankly, some of the leaders that we have in this community, what they've done over and done before us. And so that also has encouraged me and helped me to understand the importance of being active in our own community. So it's important to vote. It's also important to be very active in the community each and every day too, right?
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. Closing comments from each panelist.
It was in the shop. I had to put it in the shop again. I ain't taking it to my
If you could comments from each of the candidates. I'm sorry, panelists. I'm going back to last week. We, as Ivan said, we will take closing comments from the panelists now. Panelists, you got 1 minute. What do you want to be remembered for saying here today?
I guess I'll start. One, thank y'all so very much for allowing me to be here. And whenever I do these kinds of conversations, I always like to end it with a poem that Alonzo and I learned, because this poem answers a whole lot of questions that we find ourselves having questions to. A lot of times when you find yourself in these times and these moments, we always say, what's next? What is it that we can do? Where do we go from here? And that question is answered in a poem called We the Willing. It says, we the willing who are led by the unknown are doing the impossible for the ungrateful. We've done so much with so little. We're now qualified to do anything with nothing. And so when we look at how it is that we can make ourselves better and how we can make our communities better, it first starts with yourself. And when it starts with yourself, just being willing. Being willing is that first step. So we the willing who are led by the unknown are doing the impossible for the ungrateful. We've done so much with so little. We're now qualified to do anything with nothing. Thank you for being willing.
I love that, Hamilton. Alonzo?
Yeah, I was gonna say, how can I not speak right after that? Right after that, EA to you, my brother. That poem definitely gets me through my everyday life. But I do want to say that I do want to just speak on what Allen University is. Allen University is a great institution. You guys all know this. We're moving forward into becoming even greater, and I've been placed into a position to where I'm helping making that change happen. So I do want to say that I extend my arms out to all of you all. I extend my arms out for the experience. You know, I graduate in May coming up soon, and I do want to be able to connect with each and every one of you again, if you would like to, if you like me, if you don't, okay. But I would definitely like to make those connections with you all again. I'm very blessed and fortunate and humble to be able to be in you all's presence of making it somewhere and being able to be a panelist and basically learning from you all. So I do want to say thank you all for inviting me here, and I look forward to speaking to each and every one of you all again. Thank you.
Thank you, Alonzo. Congratulations on your graduation. Kara?
I want to go back to a point that Kali made earlier. She said, you know, I'm not in politics, and she started an initiative just from a call of action within the community. So I want to go back to saying I don't consider myself as one to being a part of politics, but I do consider myself one that is a public servant and one that is a community organizer. So for everyone that's on this call, you don't have to necessarily have be a leader or have a title to be a part of the movement and to do the work that needs to be done. Find your niche and, you know, serve in whatever capacity, meet the people where they are, meet your neighbor, your friend, your mother. You are a leader in your own right. So to take on that mantle and to move forward.
Perfect. Kali, follow Kara up, please.
I would just like to say that, you know, I love being from Columbia, born and raised, went to Spring Valley. And I know that being from here means that I'm at least 1 or 2 phone calls away from someone who was willing to help and willing to clarify anything that I do not know, do not understand. And I think that, you know, moving forward, everyone should just take advantage of that one phone call or one text or Facebook message or any kind of way, because our community is based on people who help. And, you know, that Voters on the Fence website that I started was for people who don't know, like myself, who didn't know about politics and how to actually maneuver and the ways through knowing candidates and knowing what you're voting for. So I would just say, get out there, educate yourself, and don't be afraid to reach out and talk to people.
Absolutely. Rich history in Columbia, in South Carolina, indeed. Sam, take us home.
So first, I'm gonna start off by disagreeing with Kara Simmons and Kali Gallman, and I would say that I'm blessed to be able to say all of these panelists are friends of mine, and Kali's a fellow Viking. They are not in politics, so I'm just gonna put that out there. But in all seriousness, what I would say, did a panel similar to this not too long ago with Kara, and I left folks with the same thing: dream big dreams. And so anytime I talk to folks at an elementary school, anybody, the biggest advice I can tell folks is to dream big dreams. In this conversation, I think that contextually, if you are going to the polls and you are voting on your community's future, have big dreams in mind, right? Requirements that you want that elected official to live up to, whether it's your school board, as Hamilton mentioned earlier, or it's the U.S. Senate or the president. Dream big dreams, hold those elected officials accountable each and every day, and make sure that those dreams come to fruition. So dream big dreams.
Powerful. We want to thank you all so much for participating with us today. Thank you for being so personal and so personable and also so passionate. We really feel that through the screen. And Ivan, if you agree, we will conclude this session of Zooming to the Polls and turn it back over to our CEO, Ivory Matthews, to close us out.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Jamie and Ivan. You did a wonderful job. I do know early on in the program, we did want to hear from our subject matter experts. So I do want to give an opportunity right now to hear from Dr. Felder. I know he's been, Dr. Felder, we have you on.
Yes, yes, I'm here.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you.
So we want to hear from you. I know you always share very good updates for us. I know you've been crisscrossing the state in the last few weeks. Any important updates you'd like to share with us?
Yes, but first I just want to share one word that if we all understand it, we'll get along much better, and that's change. The word change. Everything changes in this world. Fashions change, our bodies change, we change our minds, laws change, technology change. And if you understand that, you won't get frustrated. You will then be able to find solutions to these changes, like us old folk now beginning to catch up to this technology and all of that. But remember, change, that one word. And then finally, starting on Monday of next week, there will be rides to the polls sponsored by Omega Psi Phi Fraternity. In vans. We'll be using vans so that cars might be too congested for some people, but at least there'll be spacing in the van. Call the NAACP office starting on Monday of next week, and we'll have rides to the polls from any place in Richland County, and we especially want to make the service available to the Housing Authority. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Felder. Ms. Bean.
Thank you, Mrs. Matthews. Speaking of rides to the polls, we've certainly been faced with difficulties of keeping our residents safe while figuring out a way to provide transportation to the polls, and we've been extremely fortunate to work out a partnership with ComEd. I'd like to give Mr. Ford an opportunity to respond to this question, because I know that you often speak of Columbia Housing's residents' historic impact on elections. Are you seeing signs that voters throughout the area are following safety guidelines during the pandemic?
Absolutely, and thank you all for having me here. And I especially want to thank these panelists. I'm encouraged by the next generation of leadership. All of the names, Sam, Hamilton, Khalid, Kira, Jamie and Ivan, and the young lady that's on the board as well. So let me thank you all and just share. Yeah, I am seeing that. I think people are taking very serious this issue of COVID. As someone mentioned, all families, everybody's impacted by it. But I want to offer up just one or two thoughts right quick. My good friend and your good friend as well, the panelists, talked about Antoine Seawright, and no one is more quoted out there now than Antoine. And he says, if you're not on the table, then you must be a part of the meal. I would go back and I'm going to end my comment today with an old school comment, but I'll start with this. Malcolm X says, you can invite me to sit down at the table, but if you don't put anything on my plate, then you can't say that we're having a meal. So there are a lot of people that are sitting at the table, but there's nothing on the plate. That doesn't mean that we're having a meal. So I just want to lift that up, and I'll tell Antoine that when next time I talk to him. But I want to say to young people, stay focused. This is about winning. It's about the W. We can be all emotional about things, but if we don't win, and whatever win means to you is whatever it means to you. But if you don't win, if you don't get the right people into the office, then they won't be able to govern. So your issues may get left out. So it's about winning. It's not about being emotional. And I say that to say this. Yeah, when I came on, people were talking about Ice Cube. I'm like Sam, I haven't sat down and read what he had to say. I tend to not follow up and these are my terms, I tend to not follow up nonsense. But I'll tell you, during the movement, there are always African Americans and others that are trying to upset the movement. There are always people who look like you, look like us, that are going in a different direction. That's their right. But you don't lose your focus. You don't get emotional and focus on a Kanye. I don't pay attention to Kanye. I don't pay attention to that kind of foolishness. It's about winning. Nothing matters unless we win. And I'll close with this. It's about connecting the dots. And someone talked about earlier about protesting. Well, you can protest all day long, but the dot connection is voting. That we vote, and if we vote, we can win. And last comment I'll make, I want to share with all these new school panelists, and I love all of you, and I appreciate the work that you're doing, but spend some time and sit down with an old school brother or sister just to get their perspective on how things are and how they connect to the past. Do not go forth without sitting down, talking with a Jim Felder. And if you talk to no one else, talk to Jim Felder. Talk to a Chief Austin. Talk to people who've been in the movement, of Cynthia Hardy, even though she's younger, much younger. Talk to these people and get the perspective from whence they've come, and that'll tell you where you're going. There's a quote that says, the further you look back, the further you look ahead. Thank you for always inviting me to be a part of these meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Vince Ford, our subject matter expert, for those kind remarks. And now I will turn it over to Mrs. Ivory Matthews, our CEO, for the closing remarks.
Thank you, Ms. Bean. I do have one more announcement. I know we're running up on time, but I'd like for Ms. Avita Glover. She has a very important announcement, and I would be remiss if I did not allow her the opportunity to share this announcement with everybody.
Good afternoon, everyone, and please excuse my mask. I have a revolving door, so I have to stay covered up. But this coming Saturday, the 24th, the NAACP, the National NAACP, is having their early get out to vote kickoff day. And all over the United States, the NAACP will be doing some whatever way that they want to project this to get people interested in voting and voting early. Columbia Branch NAACP is also doing a march on Columbia. Together we stand and together we shall rise. Hamilton will be a part of it. Alonzo is going to be there playing his flute. I'll be there doing something, trying to get y'all to see me sing something to you. I don't want you to forget. Do not forget from whence you came. Google me, you'll find out something about me too. I also do the Twitter and the TikTok and all of the rest. So all of us are not, look at Sam laughing at me, but truly, on the serious take of it, y'all, I love all of you, and I have a history with most of you. Those that I don't, I will. And I also want to say thank you to Lee McRoberts. The last time I was given a chance to do a commercial, she joined the NAACP. Now, I need to get another one out of this group and get it soon. Love y'all. If nobody else told you today, I do.
Thank you, Ms. Glover. Chairman Cromartie, we have our chairman of the board that's on. Would you like to share a few things?
I just want to thank everyone for their participation. This has been a vibrant and exciting conversation and discussion. To Dr. Felder, Mr. Ford, Mr. Austin, thank you again for your commitment to Columbia Housing, and to Ms. Drew and to Mr. Carter. You guys have been excellent moderators and facilitated a great discussion. I think wonderful comments have been made, and I saw my fellow commissioner, Ms. Pickens, and so I want to appreciate her for also being on the call. Thank everyone for their participation and their leadership. And I do not think it was a mistake when all of our panelists were called candidates. I think it was foresight. That
was the devil.
That was the future being brought manifest. That's what I heard. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Again, I want to echo the sentiments of the chairman. I want to thank our subject matter experts who always join us on a weekly basis, Dr. James Felder, Dr. Charles Austin, Chris Meyer, and Vince Ford. And certainly special thanks to our guest panelists for providing such a great session for us today. I learned so much. If you guys saw me like looking down, I was really taking notes. You guys, I learned so much on these. I get super excited about it. And so don't be surprised if your ideas, things that you share with us, you see it translated on our CH Vote campaign. So we don't mind using people's other ideas and translating them. So thank you so much. I also want to thank our communications team for their efforts. I want to thank many of our staffers and residents who are on the call. Finally, I want to thank all of our great community partners that Columbia Housing is so blessed to work with. We appreciate and value all of you. One last announcement before I adjourn, and I promise you this is the last announcement. I would love to have all of the organizations, all of you who are on the call today, to join us at our Zooming to the Polls Get Out and Vote Parade at 3 p.m. on Saturday, October 31st at Lattimore Manor Apartments. That's Saturday, October 31st is our Get Out and Vote Parade at Lattimore Manor. Lattimore Manor is our largest public housing community with historically low voter participation, and we are really hoping to increase participation this year. Since the launch of our CH Votes campaign, we've increased our voters registration there from 59% to 67%, which we are really proud of. We know we can do better. We just really want to get 100% of our eligible voters there who have already registered this year to participate in the upcoming election. I know that our communications team have reached out to some of you and confirmed your attendance. For those of you who we have not reached out to, please be on the lookout for notification from our communications team. We'd love to have you join us, on the 31st. Thank you again. You guys, please be safe. And for those of you who have not voted, I expect to see you posting your I voted sticker on your social media site so we can like it and share it. But thank you guys and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you too. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.